nation in decline, a failing nation, MAGA 2024. So he made it about himself and his campaign. Notably absent from Trump's message were any condolences to Navalny's family and no condemnation of the man most believed to be responsible for his death. And that would be, of course, Russian President Vladimir Putin. A lot to get to on this. There's been a lot of reaction to Donald Trump on this, and not everybody is falling in line. I think it's a little bit jarring to hear him talk this way. I hope it is.
It is jarring, and we're actually seeing a continued part of a process. And process began in 2015 when Donald Trump, there was just something wrong. Donald Trump would come on our show, he'd go on other shows, he'd talk to Bill O'Reilly, and it was a constant defense of Vladimir Putin. It was this love of Vladimir Putin and this fear, this absolute fear of ever crossing him, and led him in 2015 to say that Vladimir Putin was a strong leader, a great leader. When I brought up that he killed journalists and political opponents, he shrugged and said, "We kill people too, Joe." And he continued doing that. We've seen now, it's hard to believe, but we've seen now other members of the Republican Party ape that line. And there is right now a connection. Donald Trump, Viktor Orban in Hungary, an anti-West thug that runs Hungary, and Vladimir Putin. And you've seen the Trump right move in that direction, and it is just absolutely frightening and jarring, and unlike anything we've seen in domestic politics, that major figures are now going to the side that, people who consider America enemies. And Wall Street Journal editor-at-large Gerard Baker wrote about this this morning in a piece titled "The Moral Blindness of Putin's Apologists on the Right." And he writes in part, "The only response of all decent people to the death of Alexei Navalny, the brave critic of Vladimir Putin's regime in a Siberian prison camp, is grief, disgust, and unqualified condemnation. It is the sort of event that defines the malevolent nature of Mr. Putin's Russia. But that sort of decency evidently was above the moral reach of some of the more prominent leaders of what used to be the conservative movement." Newt Gingrich saw a parallel that many others highlighted. Navalny's, quote, "death in prison is a brutal reminder that jailing your political opponents is inhumane and a violation of every principle of a free society," he tweeted. Mr. Biden isn't Vladimir Putin. Mr. Biden doesn't invade. Newt then, of course, compared Vladimir Putin to Joe Biden, which is just so grotesque. It's just beyond grotesque. I keep waiting for Newt to grow out of this. I really do. I really do. And he's incapable. He compares Biden to Vladimir Putin, to which Gerard Baker writes, Mr. Biden isn't Vladimir Putin. Mr. Biden doesn't invade neighbors on a false pretext, killing indiscriminately. He doesn't make people who have fallen into disfavor fall from the windows of tall buildings. Has he, Newt? Has he, Newt? Why do you lie? Why do you keep lying for Donald Trump? Baker goes on, if you can't see the difference, then I say respectfully that if you have lost or discarded your capacity for moral reasoning. Let me continue. Jonah Goldberg, conservative columnist for the LA Times, wrote this: "No, Donald Trump does not equal Alexei Navalny." And he writes in part this: "For numerous right-wing Republican figures, the real lesson of Navalny's killing is that Navalny equals Trump." Trump himself invoked the comparison on social media. His first mention of Navalny's name wasn't to condemn his death or Putin's role in it, but to cast himself as an American Navalny.
Oh, God.
Condemning such false moral equivalence was once central to American conservatism. Trump is not an innocent anti-corruption crusader, brutalized and murdered for championing democracy and the rule of law. No, in fact, he does just the opposite. There are ample plausible criticisms of the legal cases against Trump. But even if you agree with all of them, I don't. The notion that Joe Biden is the moral equivalent of Vladimir Putin is a slander, not merely of Biden, but of America itself. And why am I so angry? Why am I so angry about this? Because these are attacks on America. These aren't just attacks on Joe Biden. This is an attack on America that we've seen Donald Trump participating in since he came on our show in December of 2015, saying that American leaders were just as bad as Vladimir Putin, who openly kills opponents. Goldberg goes on and says, indeed, one reason we know it's not true, publicly criticizing Putin's treatment of Navalny can land you in a Russian cell. Criticizing Biden's alleged...
Hands up, I have tried and failed. I'm serious. I failed. F-A-I-L. I have tried my best to, I don't know, understand what it is that Fox are attempting to do. Understand how they manipulate facts and truth. Understand how, as far as they're concerned, the news is never news unless it's somewhere that they can spin and turn it around to tell the world that Trump is brilliant. Trump never does anything untoward and Biden is bad. In a nutshell. They have a show called The Five with Jessica Turliffe. Now, for me, Jessica is the voice of facts, the voice of reason, and at least attempts to try and tell something which you could recognise as being truthful, but they shout her down. And I've just realised the job of a Fox entertainment individual is not to share any facts, share any news, share any truth. It is to be a laundry, to wash. That is what they do. They wash the Trump BS. They wash the nut jobs BS. Spin it, pummel it, do whatever. To those who are watching Fox, it all comes out smelling just, what a perfect world. Somebody's trying to tell the truth. Shout all over them, talk all over them, spin it, spin it, spin it. So we are now officially going to launch the Fox washing machine heads. That's how, for the time being, we'll be covering certain people on Trump TV, the laundry. And I suppose you can sell the Trump washing machines if he likes.
How do you think the business community is actually looking at it? She says it's no big deal, but Kevin O'Leary says it's an atrocity.
I'm not sure. I think we'll have to see how it plays out on the appeals court, and that's what everyone is waiting for to see, right? Because the state will have to prove exactly who was the victim in all of this. And I'm assume they've thought about this long enough that they have a good answer for that. But basically, everyone who is defending Donald Trump in this, from Kevin O'Leary to some folks here, is saying it is okay to falsify your business records, to issue false financial statements, to commit conspiracy for insurance fraud. When he goes out there,
where's the fraud?
The fraud is, and David Brooks lays this out really nicely. He was on a weekend show. He says you can't have three sets of books. You can't have the books for the bankers, so that's Deutsche Bank, who, is happy with all this. Then you have your IRS books, and we know that you're supposed to tell the IRS the truth. And then you have a set of books with the real numbers, I guess, which is what Alan Weisselberg had.
But
Donald Trump continually.
There were three sets of books. Where do you get that from? Where do you get that from?
That's part of what Judge had said that he present. Oh, because he's a lunatic, it means it didn't exist.
Yeah, this is
Donald
a judge
Trump,
who decides cases based on emotion.
Okay, I think emotion is hot at the table, and it is not emanating from me. So, since Donald Trump ran the first time, he has been making this argument. If they could do this to me, they could do this to you. The average person is not inflating their wealth by $800 million to $2.2 billion. They're not sexually assaulting women. They're not storing classified documents in the toilet. They're not fomenting an insurrection. Mar-a-Lago, you remember the documents?
Let's focus on this case. We can do a lot.
You always do that.
No, Jessica, you're doing a laundry list.
Really? You
You're
can say
doing a
Judge
laundry
Edgar on
list
this too.
when we're focused on one topic. We're focused on one topic.
Okay.
And yes, it does matter.
Falsifying your business records. Do you do that?
No. I'll tell you what I do, because I'm glad you asked. When you're in a contract negotiation with a company, let's say your contract is up and your company says, we want to renew your contract, and they don't give you a bump in the raise. That's the beginning. And then you come back and you go, you know what? I'm going to ask for the frickin' moon, which I always do. And I know I'm not going to get, but I also know at the end of the day, they're going to see everything. I can say I want $100 million over the next 6 months. They're going to laugh, laugh, laugh. But that doesn't mean I broke the law. It means this is what you put down in a negotiation. And as the judge said, it's all transparent. They actually see it. There is no fraud here, which is why you're bringing up other stuff.
No, it's not. I started with that, and then I said, actually, it's a pattern. Well,
I'm sure.
I got to get Jesse in. Let's just give you those final words.
I was going to say, you obviously, with respect, Jessica, know nothing about real estate valuations, real estate development, or the IRS, or getting loans from big banks to develop skylines in New York City. Donald Trump did more for New York City than 1,000 Letitia James has done.
Over the weekend, it seemed like Trump kind of came awfully, I'm not a lawyer, but he came awfully close to defaming your client again. So let's just listen to that, and I just want to talk about it on the other side.
We haven't done anything wrong. We've done nothing wrong. This last case is we haven't done anything wrong. How about the one 2 weeks ago? A woman, I'm saying, who the hell is she? Who is the woman? It's so unfair what's happening in our country. Our court system is a mess.
So I'm just going to restate for everyone. Trump knows exactly who your client is. He was found liable for sexually abusing her and then defaming her by lying about it. Do you watch these, and could this warrant a third suit as you watch that?
We certainly watch them. It's hard not to. Every time Donald Trump speaks, I think, as we said at trial many times, he has the biggest megaphone in the world. And so everyone hears them, including us and including our client, E. Jean Carroll. And as you said, what he said was absolutely a lie. 2 unanimous federal juries have found that not only did Trump know who E. Jean was, he sexually assaulted her and lied about it repeatedly. Everything he's said about her over the last 5 years has been a lie and has been defamatory. So we're watching, we're listening. We had really hoped that, as I think the jury found, that $83 million would maybe be enough to convince him to keep E. Jean Carroll's name out of his mouth. Apparently, he showed us this weekend that he really cannot control himself, and that maybe it wasn't. But we'll see what happens as this continues to play up.
You're watching them. I'm sorry, you have to watch all of these just like the rest of us do. Sean Crowley, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Really enjoyed having you on our show.
So, Chris, it took the former president almost 3 days after the death of Alexei Navalny to even so much as acknowledge it. He finally weighed in on Truth Social, but there was no reference to Putin. He even tried to compare Navalny's death to his current legal problems, suggesting that it's the same thing, essentially, a political persecution. Is Trump trying to create a way for his supporters, for Republicans, to address Navalny in some way without actually talking about Putin's role in all of this?
I'm not sure they even want to address Navalny. It's quite extraordinary that Donald Trump would somehow equate what he's going through in American courts of law with the full due process that he's accorded to what Navalny went through, being consigned to the gulag, to a Siberian prison where he died under extremely mysterious and frankly suspicious circumstances. Anybody who covered Trump during his presidency, let alone since, has to be struck by the very kid's glove approach he has given to the Russian president throughout.
Monday the 19th, it is President's Day, and